To be a human being is an honor, and we offer thanksgiving for all the gifts of life.
Mother Earth, we thank you for giving us everything we need. Thank you, deep blue waters around Mother Earth, for you are the force that takes thirst away from all living things. We give thanks to the green grasses that feel so good against her bare feet, for the cool beauty that you bring to Mother Earth's floor.
Thank you, good foods from Mother Earth, our life sustainers, for making us happy when we are hungry. Fruits and berries, we thank you for your color and sweetness. We are thankful to all good medicine herbs for healing us when we are sick.
Thank you, all the animals in the world, for keeping our precious forests clean. All the trees in the world, we are thankful for the shade and warmth you give us. Thank you, all the birds in the world, for singing your beautiful songs for all to enjoy.
We give thanks to you, gentle four winds, for bringing clean air for us to breathe from all the four directions. Thank you, grandfather thunder beings, for bringing us rains to help all living things grow. Elder brother sun, we send thanks for shining your light and warming Mother Earth.
Thank you, Grandmother Moon, for growing full every month to light the darkness for children and sparkling waters. We give you thanks, twinkling stars, for making the night sky so beautiful and for sprinkling morning dew drops on the plants.
Enlightened teachers of our past and present, we thank you for showing us ways to live in peace and harmony with one another.
And most of all, thank you, Great Spirit, for giving us all these wonderful gifts, so we will be happy and healthy every day and every night.
I looked up and two eyes were looking at me, and so I guess it's my turn. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dwayne Walker. I'm the pastor of Little Rock A.M.E Zion Church. We're so delighted and excited to have all of you gather in this place. We are so grateful for the privilege that is ours to see one another once again as we are coming out of our COVID experience. Being apart is so good to be together. Am I right about it? It's okay to clap if you agree. Amen. And so we are so delighted and grateful for the season that draws us together as we celebrate this wonderful occasion of Thanksgiving and as we gather as an interfaith body. We know that we have collective interest and concerns about hunger and those who are without, and we can't help but think of them as we thank God for all the wonderful ways that we are blessed ourselves. It calls us and causes us to want to do more. And I hope and pray that tonight we'll be reminded of that while we may come from different places, we may have different faces, we all serve the same God, and we have the same love for the same people. Amen? Amen. I'm reminded of a hymn that I love that I believe captures hopefully this moment, a hymn that was composed by Carl Boberg. The first verse says, "O Lord, my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the world thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe is displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee, how great thou art." God bless you, and thank you for coming to Little Rock. And if you have time, come back on Sunday. We'd love to have you. God bless you. I really mean that. Come back Sunday.
Thank you so much. We are so grateful to be in this space and honored to be here with you, and grateful for what you and all the wonderful folks here have done to help make this happen. So thank you all. Wow. It's been a long time since we've done this. In 2019, I was like a month and a half into being the executive director of A.M.E, and we got together at Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, and we had no idea that it was going to be quite so long until we were back together in this way. So we are delighted to see you and delighted to be together with you tonight in this space. If you were there that night, you might remember that I challenged us with the question, do you know where you live? And I spoke about how rapidly our community was changing and how many new people were arriving every day and how many new languages and cultures and traditions and stories were being added to the tapestry of Charlotte Mecklenburg. And I suggested some ways that we might all work to get to know one another. And much of the work that we've done in the 3 years since that service has been focused on creating connections and community and collaboration between those groups and between the longer-term members of A.M.E. And that is good, important, crucial work, and it will continue. But tonight, we're going in another direction. Tonight, we are turning our eyes to see and tuning our ears to hear another set of stories. Not those who are new, but those who were here first. The people indigenous to the lands that we call the Carolinas. The many native people who have and do and will continue to live right here. As a truthful story, it will be both beautiful and bitter. If we truly open our hearts to what we'll hear, we will experience sorrow and struggle, resiliency and triumph, grief and joy, the broken, the beautiful, and everything in between. As we've planned the service, I've experienced all of this, encountering my own received prejudices, my own misunderstandings, the myths that I have believed or failed to examine closely, the near neighbors that I have never met. My husband and I went to the Day of the Catawba this past Saturday, and I'm embarrassed to say that it was the first time I had ever been there, after living here for 29 years. The process of planning this service has been humbling and also deeply, deeply life-giving. And I pray that we might all have that same experience tonight. May we remain open to hearing what is hard and to receiving what is even yet stirring and sustaining. May we move together beyond myth, walking together into a truer, better, more complete, more just story. This, too, is good, important, and crucial work, and it will continue. Welcome. We are delighted that you are here.
Good evening. How are you this evening? Great. I'm glad to hear that. As your program says, and if you don't have a program, my name is Ramona Big Eagle, and I'm here to welcome the children and the children at heart. For in reality, all of us are His children, and all of us have moments of being children at heart. And as children, we tend to believe everything we see and hear, especially on TV, right? Especially in the books that we read at our schools and our libraries. And sometimes those stories aren't exactly the truth, but they're a sanitized version of the truth, or someone else's truth, not the people that experienced it. So tonight I will be sharing about the first Thanksgiving, and I'm asking that all of you, children and children at heart, be open to receive the goodness of this time of year, the gratitude that we are reminding everyone else, and also of the fact that as we tell our story, sometimes the story's a little bit different than what we expected, than what we've heard. I hope you'll be open to receive what has not always been presented, but has always been a reality for indigenous people here in the Eastern Woodland area. I thank you for your listening hearts, and that's what I ask you to do. Listen with your heart, not just your ears, but listen with your heart. As an elder once said to someone that asked, how can you tell the end of one day and the beginning of a new day? How can you tell the difference between dusk and dawn? And the answer was, a new day dawns when you look into the face of a stranger. And instead of seeing the stranger, you see your mother, you see your father, you see your brother, and you see your sister. When that happens, when you look into the face of a stranger, you see your family. Then a day ends and a new day dawns. A new day of respect, a new day of celebration for each and every one. Thank you.
Tanake. Hello. Wachawa Karire. Good evening. Niyat Windashniki Tokso, Homosikahiri. My name is Monty Hawk Brownham, and we're happy to be here. I'm going to play a song for y'all entitled Tideki Montu in the Catawba language. That means in the beginning. And for us, this is a beginning because, as LaDane had mentioned, I believe this is the first time that indigenous people have been asked to be a part of this to share our story of Thanksgiving. So with that being said, I felt like that this song in the beginning would be appropriate. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brittany Hunt. I'm a member of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. As you may have seen when I walked up here, I seem to have swallowed a watermelon seed. So be praying for me. I grew up in Lumberton, North Carolina, which is about 2 hours south of here. And the population, the indigenous population there is about 40%, so it's a pretty sizable Lumbee population there. But as I reflect, the older I get growing up, I learned very, very little about indigenous people, even though many of my teachers were indigenous, and I grew up again in an indigenous community. And so the three main things that I learned about indigenous people, or in reference to indigenous people, were the Columbus story, the Thanksgiving story, and the Trail of Tears. And that's kind of where the story ends in terms of modern American curriculum. And so what we want to ask you all to do is to do something that my pastor used to ask us to do a lot, is turn to your neighbor. So I'm going to have you turn to your neighbor or get in little small groups of 3 to 4 people maybe. And I'm going to ask you to discuss this question for about 3 minutes, so not very long for those of you who are antisocial and may hate me right now. The question is, what did you learn in school about indigenous people? And also, if you yourself are indigenous, was your history taught, and if so, how accurate was it? So again, what did you learn about indigenous people when you were in school, so kindergarten through 12th grade? We'll give you about 3 minutes.
Okay. We didn't have the music. Dun 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 dun. Okay. I love it when people turn and talk and get to know each other and answer the question. So, you talked about what you learned in school about indigenous culture, or what were you told about indigenous people when it came to Thanksgiving, and when it came to, Thanksgiving, the Trail of Tears, and anything else that you might have learned in school. I shared that I didn't learn anything in school about Thanksgiving as far as the indigenous part of it. I didn't learn anything in school about the Trail of Tears. But I learned a lot about it from my family. I'm from the Tuscarora Nation of North Carolina, and on my father's side, we're Cherokee, so I learned a lot about the Trail of Tears from my grandmother and my great-great-grandmother and grandmother, and from my father, but nothing about it in school. So I hope that if you learned about it, I hope you learned the truth, because that's what we're going to share this evening. You know, when I was growing up, I heard about Thanksgiving, every Thanksgiving, because everyone dressed up as a pilgrim or as an Indian. And I can remember coming home crying one time because they made me dress up as a pilgrim. And my mom said, "It's all right, honey, it's all right, they don't know." So that's one of my deepest memories of one Thanksgiving. It was fourth grade, in fact. I remember the teacher's name. I remember that light, collar and the buckle belt. And anyway, so when we think about Thanksgiving, we had the right idea. We had the attitude of gratitude and thankfulness, especially to the Creator who has given us yet another year of all the blessings that we have. But there's also another part of Thanksgiving that's not the pleasant part, but indeed it is the truth, and that truth needs to be told. And the reason why we're sharing it here today is because I want each one of you know others, many others. I want you to share this with them, because you're all going to Thanksgiving dinner Thursday, right? And when you sit around the table, if you take time out, I think they're ball games that day, or football games or something like that. But as you take time out from the football games and the parades, I remember that. I don't have a TV. I haven't had a TV since '72. It clouds my time for reading and thinking, so I just choose not to have one. But I remember there were parades and football games. So as you take time out from the turkey, from the football games, and the parades, I hope you'll take time to talk with your family and ask them questions. You don't have to come in with the hard truth right off, but ask them questions. Say, what do you remember learning about Thanksgiving? What's the real story behind Thanksgiving? And let them talk, let them share. And then let them share what we talk about this evening. The fact that there were many atrocities that were committed during that time. Indeed, the Pilgrims did celebrate. Is that me making that sound? Okay, indeed, the Pilgrims did celebrate the fact that they had come through a very harsh year. But what you don't hear about is that one of the reasons they survived that harsh year is because when they first came here and they're looking for food and scavenging for food to survive, they found indigenous graves that were full of corn, beans, and squash. Not speaking the language, not knowing what that was about, just knowing that this was a cache of food, they took the food because they didn't know our ways. They didn't know our customs and traditions. And it's not like they can say, "Hey, what's this over here?" So I'm not making an excuse for what happened, but I am explaining to you how it happened. So because there was a barrier of language, they thought This is a blessing from God Almighty. Look at all this corn, this beans, this squash that have been just in the ground for us. But those were provisions that were made for our indigenous ancestors as they journeyed to the afterlife. Another thing, Thanksgiving wasn't just one day with the Pilgrims. It was a week of feasting because they had met Squanto, and they never stopped to really ask or think about, how is it this Indian knows how to speak English? How did he know? Because he had been kidnapped. He had been kidnapped and taken aboard a ship, and they had gone to England, where he had served as a slave against his will, but he was outnumbered. It was just one of him and, many other colonists. And so he was a slave for 4 years. That's how he learned the English. That's how he learned the language. So when he came back and greeted them, they were shocked. Here's this Indian that knows how to speak our language. And the part that they really didn't even realize to be gratefulness about was, here was a man that had been enslaved against his will for 4 years, yet, because of his love for the Creator and mankind, he found it in himself to forgive his captors and help these to survive. He showed them how to fish, how to hunt, how to fertilize those plants, the squash, beans, and corn, with the fish head as they put it in the ground. He taught them how to survive that period. So when their crops came up, it was a time of feasting, a festival time, because they had survived that time of the harsh time of not having enough food. He had taught them how to grow food and how to survive, how to live off of the land, which was his way always. The sad part is that the Wampano people that sat down to that first Thanksgiving, those people, if you ask where are they today, in my lifetime I've pretty much met natives from many different nations, but in my lifetime I've only met one Wampano person. That's because that tribe was decimated by the colonists, okay? And again, because of a lack of understanding, the barrier of the languages that were different, but that tribe is no longer here in the great numbers that they were here because of, first off, smallpox and diseases that were brought over from England that they had no natural immunity to, and also because of the genocide, the atrocities that were committed against them. Not a happy story, but true. So as we think about Thanksgiving, think about the fact that the feast that was had was because of the harvest, and also there were feasts that were had because of the enemy, as the colonists would oftentimes say, the enemy that was defeated and killed, talking about indigenous people. There would be a feast, a holiday, a festival to celebrate that. In fact, there were so many festivals at times that Abraham Lincoln said, enough of these different festivals. Let's just have one Thanksgiving festival that celebrates our gratitude, our thankfulness to the Creator. So the many festivals that had been held because of conquering those that were here came down to one festival. So now, as my brother Jason said on Sunday, I'm not trying to take your Thanksgiving away from you or spoil it. What I am doing is sharing with you the perspective that you might not have ever heard before, sharing with you the other side of the story. I've been a storyteller, well, my mom and dad say ever since those chocolate chip cookies were missing from the kitchen table, and I explained what had happened to them. That's what they tell me. That's how long I've been telling stories. But what I've found out in the course of living and telling stories, there's their story, our story, and in between lies the truth. And it's a combination of all the stories put together. So, in your quest to continue seeking and hearing the truth, ask questions this Thanksgiving Day. Ask about the people that were first here, First Nations. Ask about why we call where we live Turtle Island. And ask what happened to the people that started calling this Turtle Island. Are they still here? I've done about 5 programs between yesterday and today. And most of the children I asked if indigenous people were still here, the majority said in every school I went to, no, they are not here. And when I asked, well, where are they? They told me they're in the museums. They're no longer here. We've got to change that narrative. And it starts with me and with you. We can change that narrative by asking questions and sharing the truth. Thank you very much for your time, your listening heart, and I hope that you will continue to share as you've shared this evening with each other. I hope you'll do the same thing on Thanksgiving. Have a great evening and a great Thanksgiving.
Hey, now I want y'all to clap for me when I get done too now. Thank y'all so much. And also, thank you so much, Ms. Ramona, for sharing that story, the true story of Thanksgiving with us. This has been a great event so far. I want to ask y'all if y'all remember a commercial that I believe was popular in the 70s and 80s. And I say I believe it was because I wasn't born then, so I really wouldn't know. But it was the Keep America Beautiful campaign, and it was kind of an anti-littering commercial or a series of commercials that were pretty popular. Dave Chappelle spoofed one of those specific commercials. If you remember, there's a scenery of a river, and there's a native person in a canoe, and he's kind of canoeing down the river, and he's wearing a buckskin outfit, and he has a feather in his hair. And then he gets out of the canoe on the riverbank, and someone drives by on the highway, and they throw some trash kind of at his feet. And then it pans to his face, and there's a single tear coming down his eye. Many remember that commercial. His name was Iron Eyes Cody. He appeared in more indigenous films than any indigenous actor of all time. However, Iron Eyes Cody was actually Italian. He was born in Italy. He was born in Sicily to Sicilian parents. He immigrated here, I believe, as a teenager. He began passing as an indigenous person when he came here, and he lived his life pretending to be an indigenous man throughout the course of his lifetime, and married an indigenous woman, lived in an indigenous community. So a very complicated story. I think if we think back on movies like Dances with Wolves, Last of the Mohicans, Pocahontas, there are many different representations of indigenous people throughout time that are not actually indigenous people at all. And so what people expect us to look like and sound like and be like and behave like are not what we actually are. I'm certain that you all didn't expect someone quite as fly as me with these snakeskin boots on, but here I am. So I think phenotypically in the way we speak, I remember when I went away to college, someone said that indigenous people weren't supposed to have a southern accent, that we were supposed to sound more mystical. And people would say really funny, weird things like that to me, and they would expect that indigenous people are supposed to live in teepees, and someone was surprised that I had running water. A kid once asked me if I made the clothes that I had on, and I had on something similar to today, and I was like, no, I did not hand-stitch this turtleneck, unfortunately. So there are many different funny stories that unfortunately give way to more sinister stereotypes of indigeneity that people hold. Just last week, I was at a doctor's appointment. I'm pregnant, obviously, did not swallow a watermelon seed. For the kids out there, sorry, I'm telling you lies as we talk about not telling lies up here. But my doctor made a comment about Lumbee people, and I told him that I was Lumbee, and he told me that his grandson is 1/8 Lumbee. And I was like, oh, cool. And then he made the comment, he said, yeah, maybe that'll help him on his college applications. And so there are moments where you think you are going to be able to have a genuine connection with someone that end up getting tainted based on preconceived notions that people have of indigenous people. There are other stereotypes like that indigenous people don't pay taxes. That is a stereotype I wish were true, but unfortunately, according to my pay stubs, indicate that that's a fallacy. And again, just more sinister ones. There was a talk that I did a few years ago at a college in South Carolina, and a guy said that he heard that the people from my tribe are cannibals. When I was in college, there was a security guard who said that he heard that people from my tribe had smaller brains than the rest of the population. And so when we think about a stereotype of indigenous people, some people think that some of the stereotypes may be inherently positive or neutral or not necessarily harmful, but again, those all make way for more sinister stories that kids unfortunately are going to be holding on to as well. And I think the little lies that we nurse and we tend to over time eventually become fully grown problems that indigenous people have to face. Again, I grew up in the South, and we have a very common phrase here that if you tell the truth, you do what? Shame the devil? Y'all don't? Okay, maybe y'all aren't from the South like me. I don't know. Tell the truth, you shame the devil. And so I think that's what we're here to do today. The truth is always a more powerful story than the lie. It's always a better story, and it's important that we move forward in our faith traditions, in our own walks, within our own religions or spiritual pathways, in our own way of raising our children and the children to come in a way that is embracing and fully reflecting on the truth. So thank you all so much. Please clap.
Peace and blessings be upon all of you on this beautiful evening. This is the greeting of the prophets. I am an imam, a leader of a Muslim community center in North Charlotte. And our mission in this world is to bring to light that which God created us for: selfless excellence, service towards others, making room for those that have no space. So in that, as we do truth-telling tonight, and as we light the fire of the beauty of the light of God between all of us, I'm going to make a prayer of repentance. We repent because sin stains us, it hurts us, it afflicts us. A lot of times when we live around sin, we think that the sin is other people's problems, but actually we are all touched by sin. One of my favorite movies of all time is Avatar. Avatar presented a brilliant, groundbreaking story that very much highlights the evils of colonialism. The movie was a very special message to all of us who have been raised up among colonial powers. The United States is a colonial power. We must overcome our supremacist biases through an intimate knowledge of the story of the oppressed peoples, to walk with them, to live in their story, not just simply to hear it, that we may truly stand with them, that we can truly stand up for them. Avatar ended up becoming the highest grossing movie of all time. But when the result was announced for the Oscar for Best Picture in 2011, it was a telling tale, indeed. Unlike the predecessor of the highest grossing film, which was Titanic, Avatar was not to win the Best Oscar. Actually, that went to a little-known, low-budget movie called Hurt Locker, which was about an elite American military bomb squad and their visions and journeys in Iraq. This is where we are at as a people. This is our culture. It's part of us. Those of us who live in this land that we call America, we must come to terms with that very elusive and yet widespread phenomenon of white supremacy. The resulting indoctrination has been widespread and profound. Our minds have been stained with a twisted ideology that clearly contradicts all religious traditions that hold the sacred golden rule as a center theme. Many well-established historical quotes of the colonialists themselves, including Columbus himself in his own memoirs, tell us that the impetus and underlying justification for the genocidal colonialization of the Americas was very much rooted in European Christian supremacy. The same racist notion of God's kingdom empowered and perpetuated slavery and its gross, disgusting cousin, Jim Crow. Same attitude about who is worthy. As we look to the Holy Land of Abraham, where many prophets walked, and they taught that beautiful lesson that if you truly love God, then you must love your neighbor. For 74 years, one group has used its religious positioning to colonize the indigenous people, causing genocide and apartheid, all with the support of tens of billions of our American tax dollars. And this all happened while yet still no specific allocation of our taxes have gone to begin to rectify the historic, systematic genocide and abuse of Native Americans and Black Americans. This is what it means that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The key enabler of these crimes against humanity has not been religion. Anyone who studies the sacred text would know that this is mockery. This is nonsense to claim that God would call for such a thing. In fact, it is a massive propaganda campaign. Each of these power structures disguise their oppression, and they somehow make it look like the one they oppress is somehow the problem. They either outright hide the truth or create a false two sides narrative that they're fighting between two equal groups. Or they promote the story of isolated bad actors. Well, some of those people did that, but of course none of us, when in fact it is a systemic history of this land. A prolific statesman and faith leader once famously said, "A time comes when silence is betrayal. The hottest place in hell is reserved for those who remain neutral in times of great moral conflict. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." Please join me in prayer. Dearest God, loving, compassionate, merciful Creator, Great Spirit, nurturer and nourisher of everything in existence, we seek your forgiveness for not having done enough to stand up to evil. We beseech your pardon for the weaknesses and laziness and lack of moral fortitude that we have given in the face of oppression. We invoke your mercy for speaking more than doing. We call upon your vast, mighty support to empower us as we come here tonight, that we can do better in strengthening ourselves, our families, our neighbors, and our friends in true love and compassion and benevolence. Benevolence that truly knows those who are underprivileged, who truly understands the stories and the perceptions of those who've been abused. We ask your guiding wisdom in reforming our country and reforming our leaders, that we may transform the world to a place of action, a place that brings action towards relieving all of the pain and suffering of those oppressed among us. We hope in your exalted guardianship in empowering the spiritual to overcome the material in our lives, that we may realize true richness is in the heart and the soul and the mind and not in things that we see around us. It is only in you that we may see the truth and live by it. Take us all on the path that we may overcome the corruption of the evil of man. That selfless excellence may reign far and wide, bringing about peace and harmony among all life on earth. Amen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amina Ghaffar, and I know what you're all thinking. Where are you from? Where are you really from? I hear that question a lot, and so I always enjoy explaining where my name comes from. My grandfather converted to Islam in the 70s during the Black Muslim movement, actually, and my father also took the name Abdul Ghaffar. So my grandfather's name is Abdul Ghaffar, and my father's name is Abdul Ghaffar, and I hold that very deep and close to my heart, because the reason why he did that is because he wanted to change his name and adopt a new religion that brought him closer to his culture, to his people. And he also did that to separate himself from the people that enslaved our ancestors at some point in time. I was very moved by the Imam's words, and I want to speak a little bit to the overall overarching structure of what is causing false narratives like Thanksgiving to be spread. And it's called settler colonialism. And it's important to understand that it is a structure. It's not a singular event. It must be maintained. How is it maintained? Through lies. And so how do we begin to attack this structure? By doing things like we're doing tonight. And how do we begin to tell a better story? And it starts with our ears. And as Ramona was saying, it starts with our open hearts. It starts with an open mind. I want to invite everyone to place your hand on your heart. And you feel that beating inside of your chest. It's actually the same inspiration behind the drum that you're hearing over there. So whether it's beating fast, whether it's beating slow, if you felt a connection to that drum over there, it's because you're supposed to. And I think it's time for us to start dispelling some of the misconceptions that we have about Indigenous culture, and to have these conversations not just in the context of our history, but in the context of our present, because we are human beings. We're living right now. And I also want to invite everyone to take a deep breath. Exhale. I'm also doing this for my own body, because when I hear those stories about colonization, when I hear stories about oppression, I also need that time. I also need to regulate my own body when I hear those things. And I think it's important for the audience to be in tune with that also. How many of you guys practice the Sikh faith? Are there any Sikhs in here? Okay, well, Valerie Carr, the author of A Manifesto of Revolutionary Love, once said that given all of the things that we're seeing in our world today, the negativity, the violence, the extreme violence, the pain, the suffering, where is this all coming from? Is this the end, or is this a new beginning? And so Valerie Carr says, what if this isn't the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if America is waiting to be born again? What if this is the time for us to embrace change, to embrace what's coming towards us? And I think it's important to understand that we cannot jump to systemic change. A lot of us want to just dismantle the structures. We can't go as far as doing the work within ourselves first. So without personal transformation, systemic change is not sustainable. And we also have to monitor our relationships with one another. And so, as Ramona was saying earlier, are we able to look around this room and see each other as a brother, as a sister, as an auntie, as a grandmother, or are we looking at each other as strangers? And this largely causes a lot of the rifts that we're seeing in our society today. There's so many misunderstandings because we're not listening to each other. We're not putting ourselves in the position of other people. We're not walking another person's walk. We're not even open to listening to what somebody else's experience may be. We limit ourselves to our own experiences or people who look like us experiences, when really we can find so much commonality if we just opened our ears, if we just opened our hearts. Another thing I'll say is there's a lot of talk about just healing trauma or going to therapy, taking medicine, making things feel better that way, but healing trauma is futile if we don't stop perpetration. Because people just continue to people continue to get re-traumatized. People continue to get abused. Whole groups of people are continuing to be ostracized. So we have to make sure that we're addressing where these issues are coming from, where this stagnancy is coming from. I'll also say on a lighter note, There's a lot of things that indigenous communities are doing to rectify the wrongs that are being done in our community. So we're not asking for saviorism, we're asking for allyship, and we're even asking for accompliceship. Are you going to stand with us on our issues? Are you going to stand with us in the fight against big oil? Are you going to stand with us to fight for Mother Earth? Because it's your water too that you're drinking that's contaminated. It's everyone's resources that are being contaminated. And we're also asking that diversify what you watch on TV if you choose to watch TV. There's so many shows today that don't just highlight Native trauma now. There's shows like Reservation Dogs that uses humor to talk about really difficult issues. So we are still here. You can interact with us. You can form relationships with us. I'm wearing a designer, her name is Jay Okuma. You can go online to her website and buy my whole outfit today if you want to, if you like it, if it speaks to you. And you don't have to be Native to do so. There's so many different ways to support our communities, to form new relationships, and to look at us in a contemporary light, because we are not just our history. Again, we are waiting for the rebirth of this country, and we are ready to lead that fight. We are ready to lead that march to a better tomorrow. Okay, I'll let Monty play music now.
That's sort of going to be hard to follow. That I enjoyed that. The song I'm going to play for y'all now is a song entitled "Thank God You're a Part of My Life."
Okay, I'm back. Did you guys miss me? Okay, so again, we've heard a lot of information so far tonight, and I wanted to just go around the room, and I'll speak a little bit about what I'm about to do first. So when I was in graduate school, I was looking for a way to figure out, I had been studying historical trauma for a couple years when I was in college. And in graduate school, we had the opportunity to do a practicum and to address something that we were interested in. And so I was able to do my practicum on healing historical trauma, and I did so with a somatic therapist who was using somatic literacy in combination with meditation and mindfulness to work with a small cohort of Alaskan natives and to heal their historical trauma. And so out of this practicum has actually grown our own movement, our own program called Breasts Together for a Change. And so what we do is we, exactly as I was mentioning in my previous presentation, is we are attempting to stop perpetration and heal trauma simultaneously, because it's important to understand that even on a personal, interpersonal, and systemic level, that trauma and perpetration operate in tandem with each other, like yin and yang, push-pull. So we have traumas inside of, each and every one of us has experienced some type of trauma. Each and every one of us has experienced something that's happened bad in our life. But we've also had good things happen in our life. And we've also had good things arise from the bad in our life, and bad things arise from the good in our life. And so we are attempting to use this ideology of stopping perpetration and healing trauma to create a movement that operates on accountability, motivation, reckoning, and accountability, or awareness, excuse me. And so what I want everyone to do is to relax your shoulders. How many of you just realized that your shoulders were really tight? How many of you just realized that your neck needed that release? I want you to activate the relaxation muscles in your back. And even if you feel like slumping down in your chair, that's perfectly okay. And to add another layer to that, if you want to do this privately, I would invite everyone to close their eyes. And if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, I would ask you to look forward in a light gaze. And I'll ask everyone to take a deep breath in through your nose and release through your mouth. Did you notice any tension leaving your chest? Or did the tension come from your belly? Or did it come from your lower back? Be curious about where the source of your tension is coming from. And then I want you to focus on a part of your body that is relaxed. It can be your fingers, it can be your toes, it can be your belly. And I'd invite you to take another deep breath and activate relaxation all over your body, starting from the top of your head to your eyes, to your cheeks, to your neck, back to your shoulders again. Let it undulate down your spine, through your glutes. Relax your legs, from your quads to your calves, which stores so much emotion and stores so much energy as we walk around throughout the day, to the soles of your feet. And as you experience this relaxation, think about what was causing the source of your tension. Was it something that somebody said here tonight? Was it something that happened earlier in your day? Was it something that happened at work? Are you stressed about cooking the turkey on Thursday? Be curious about what's going on in your body. and notice how it relates to what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your heart, and what's going on in your spirit. Can you feel a difference? Can you feel a shift? Embrace openness. Embrace courage. Embrace radical compassion. Embrace empathy. And activate revolutionary love. And thank you for your attention. Thank you for doing this exercise with me. And this is something that you can do on your own throughout the day, something that I should do more often actually. And thank you.
Good evening. It is good to be here with all of you. So lovely to see your faces. Thank you to the storytelling and to the listening. We have been charged with calls to action, 3 minutes, one each. So I will be brief. Revolutionary love, she said. I like that as a call to action. I work with a nonprofit that does environmental climate justice ministry, Green Faith. And when I think about what we do, we seek to do it in alignment with groups like the Indigenous Environmental Network, because we recognize that the settler colonialism that has been discussed here tonight is continuing. It continues every time a fossil fuel company shows up on treaty lands and demands to build a pipeline. I got to experience this firsthand last year when I went to the Treaty People Gathering in northern Minnesota. And what touched me about my experience was the deep, deep connection to the land that the people had, that they spoke about constantly. And they reminded us that we all have a connection to the land, and that some of us have lost that connection when we left our home country and came here. But now we have an opportunity to act on our own indigeneity, as Grandmother Mary of the Ojibwe said last summer, to act on our own indigeneity and figure out what are our stories and what are our actions and what are our songs that we're going to speak and say. And to do that, if we will, on this indigenous land, keeping in mind the solidarity and the relationships with the indigenous people who came here first and the wisdom that they have to offer us. And she invited us as people of faith to think about how are we going to act upon our faith. And so I invite us to figure out how we want to act. In solidarity with our indigenous brothers and sisters, to work for the health of the community, to preserve cultural ways that have something to teach us, and to take care of the water and the water keepers who are being threatened every day. Because as they remind us, this is a resource that we must share and care for together. And so I invite you to act upon this as a call to action this Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you, A.M.E. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone that spoke before me. Thank you so much. And thank the drummers and just everyone who is present on this evening. So I have been to many MECMEN Thanksgiving services, and this is one like no other. And I'm glad about it, and I'm excited about it. And my 1 minute, I would just like to say, get excited. I stand before you tonight excited about what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing in this room. I have never, ever, ever had a Thanksgiving celebration like this one. So there are so many takeaways, and I've been taking notes on my phone and so that I wouldn't forget, but the one note that I want to bring forth this evening is to make connections and make corrections in our knowledge and in our understanding of one another. There are so many things that we don't know about one another. There are so many things that we do not know about the land upon which we stand. Let's make those connections. Let's get excited about it. Let's make those connections and make corrections in our knowledge and understanding of one another that we may transform this nation. I know we can do it. We have the collective will right here in this room. The takeaway for tonight, the call to action for tonight is to share what you've heard tonight with someone in your congregation, someone in your classroom, someone in your family, that we may be catalysts for change. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Zach Serber. On top of everyone that A.M.E. and Sonia thanked today, I'd like to thank MECMIN. They have gathered us together today. They gather us together throughout the year, and it's through their network that work like this is possible. I'd like to call you all to be allies, as Amina put it. Allies to the indigenous communities who are with us here today, not in museums, but across the Carolinas and across our nation. And to be a good ally, you have to continue your education. That goes far beyond the speeches and services like you're at today. Accessing media created by folks from indigenous communities is a small yet incredibly important way to be an ally. You can watch Reservation Dogs on Hulu, read The Firekeeper's Daughter, or stream music by Charlie Lowry on Spotify while cooking this holiday season. There are even video games like Never Alone and podcasts like All My Relations to entertain you and your family. In your programs, you will find a list of these resources and more. Be sure to add them to your rotation and keep justice centered in your life throughout this holiday season and beyond. Thank you.
Woo, Mekudamin, Chin, Kiohe, Nohon, Pipise, Mima Crystal, Mima Okanichi, Saponi, Watiwa. So while my niece over here got you guys relaxed, I feel bad because what I'm about to say, you guys might, so I'm gonna have to maybe get her to come back up here. I was too moved by the imam and what he said, and I just wanna thank these women on the stage, my niece Amina, Ms. Ramona, and my other niece, Dr. Brittany, for speaking their truth to power and uplifting indigenous women. On this journey about missing murdered indigenous women, I was trying to think about what my appeal to the audience would be. And so I just wanted to talk to you about this post that I was tagged on in social media. So a few weeks ago, this post was about domestic violence, human trafficking, and attacks on our indigenous women. And this was back in August when I was finishing my doctoral dissertation on missing murdered indigenous women in North Carolina. And I accomplished that at the University of Dayton. And what I noticed was for the last 3 years that I have been doing this research, we have to have these long, hard conversations to heal and move forward without embracing this white supremacy culture. So throughout this whole time, I'm so glad I made relatives all across Turtle Island, what we call the United States. I've sat with elders and heard stories. I've sat with people in my community. I've sat with people in Robeson County. And I just want to pause for the latest victim that I just heard about. Her name is Kayla Hammonds. So let's give a moment. She was murdered brutally in front of her children at a grocery store by her ex. She was stalked and harassed for years, and she did ask for help from the police, and she went unheard. And so we have to hold people accountable. There are over 600 cases that I know of that I have personally researched of women, girls, and two-spirits of missing, murdered indigenous people, and there may be more that we are not aware of. And you can see in your program, we have a website called MMIWNC. We can't talk about this problem without acknowledgement of our intertwined histories, like the Imam said, of African American and American Indian histories. These histories have long been considered kindred by those who see the original sin of the United States as twofold: a dual theft by European colonizers, the taking of indigenous lives and land, and the seizure of Black bodies and labor. Both groups suffered the loss of language, culture, and freedom. There are many ways the two people's histories have overlapped since the first contact over 500 years ago. In African American popular culture, these early interactions often take the form of romanticized tales, and the same for indigenous people. Many people are overlooking the shared historical experiences of the two groups and ignoring the modern-day American Indian encounters with issues of poverty, racism, and police violence. Meanwhile, in my communities, and African American communities are viewed through a prejudicial lens, similarly to the kind that many white Americans use as a people who have been hurt by racism through one point of enslavement. But we cannot pull ourselves up by bootstraps, as they often tell us. The real history between African Americans and Native Americans is complex, and it requires acknowledging both the times and places, and we have to understand that when we're talking about missing murdered Indigenous women. In these deep complexities that shape the ideas Black and Native people have one another today, it really didn't click to me until I traveled hundreds of miles to a different reservation, going from the northwest, southwest, plains, northeast, and then my people in the southeast in the last year. Our experiences are the same, just as different parts of the country, seeing everything from environmental racism that my husband and I work with, to human trafficking, even having my own debit card stolen at a Rapid City hotel. The same thing happened in Robeson County. Over the last 6 months, I have seen it: people who refuse to let people into their cliques of mean girl clubs, to natives who really can't see past their own face, but again, to really lost souls of my relatives who are homeless, who live in homes. In the end, we are humans and we have lost our spirits, as some try to decolonize their systems thinking, and others are just naive and have sacrificed and have a privilege that was sacrificed by the generations before us so we could be at a level or even try to even the playing field. Again, we have left our communities and we're trying to make a community enforce it. We aren't living in a 360 aware. We are living check to check. To some people, we are just money. There is no sense of community. And we are tied into our own people making decisions based off their own colonization of leaving the tobacco fields. I'm just 2 generations away from the tobacco fields. We are so tied to a rape culture and the politics of women's bodies. This is a result of colonism, taking of the land, trafficking people, the sickness of drugs, substance abuse, and the legal system, which really fails us, has failed Native women by taking away a women-centered society, replacing it with patriarchy and oppression that live off the violence as a way to control our people. So I encourage you to help women stop playing in this patriarchy. And certain natives have become so naive that they don't really see that this is happening to their own family, their third and fourth cousins. And it is our huge problem. And we have to really stop and think. So I ask you guys, when you are talking to your relatives this Thanksgiving, that you talk about missing murdered Indigenous women in our communities. And again, we have moved away from a community-based thinking system to more individually based, and we really need to go back. So I may ask the drum to clear the air. Our women and girls are sacred to the earth. They carry water, which is life. This woman here is carrying life. They have been devalued, ignored, and pushed to a point of vague visibility. However, we are still here, our sisters. You come from this earth, and you carry the water that makes life in all of its glory possible. As Unchi Maya Angelou once said, "It is in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I am woman phenomenally." Thank you.
Originally, it had me listed on there, but Miss Crystal had asked if the drum would clear the air. So the drum group, A.M.E. Catawba Fire, is going to clear the air.
God is good. We'll try that again. God is good. And all the time. There you go. I bring you greetings from Trinity Presbyterian Church in Charlotte. I'm Steve Lindsley. That's a place where I have the pleasure of serving as one of the pastors there. We are thrilled to get to host next year's service, Thanksgiving service. We are a family of faith like I imagine many of yours. We are just trying to make heads and tails of things these days. We are trying to make sense of the world we are living in, trying to figure out what our role is in it. We are trying to acknowledge the ways that our faith tradition has been part of some of the brokenness that has been highlighted tonight over the years, and we are trying to figure out what we can do to be part of mending that. And I'm reminded, as I've been thinking about all of the things that have been shared this evening, of a quote that I heard this past summer at a youth conference, because the youth really are the present. We say they're the future of the church in my tradition, but I try to remind people that they are the present as well as the future. This from Peter Story, Archbishop of the Methodist Church of South Africa. Until you lead your congregation to engage with the needs of the world, your pastoring will be mere pampering, your proclamation a religious form of talking to yourself, You must resist with all of your might the temptation to play church while the world bleeds. Stop playing church. I haven't worked it into a sermon yet, but I'm gonna. And I don't know what's on tap for next year, but I hope that then and up until then, that in our various faith traditions, we can find ways to make a concrete difference and live into that revolutionary love that was mentioned. And I look forward to doing that in 363 days, 22 hours, and 30 minutes. We will see you then. Blessings.
So let me start with a couple of just practicalities. Miss Ramona is willing to spend some time. She brought some wonderful personal artifacts. If you, children or children at heart, would like to ask questions or just view them more carefully, you are welcome to come up afterwards. And I believe she has some copies of her book for sale, which we would love to share that with you. The offering, we're being as COVID safe as possible. So if you want to support the work that Crystal shared with us, and also to support A.M.E, there are offering baskets at every exit. So, and there's a QR code if you want to go online. There are envelopes if you'd like to make a cash or check gift. So the logistics. I've often thought that the biggest trick in a true spiritual life is the ability to hold at least two things at the same time. Much of what we've heard tonight has been hard. And it may have left you feeling scared or angry or guilty or any number of other emotions. And so much of what we have heard and seen and witnessed has been unbelievably beautiful. So my prayer as we move towards this ending is that we can hold them both. And that both the bitterness and the beauty will guide our steps. Because I think if we have one or not without the other, we're going to go wrong. But if we can hold both the pain and the grief of what we've heard, and the beauty and the resiliency and the art and the somatic wisdom that we've heard, I think that will lead us right. So the closing words are actually not mine. We wanted to give those who have led us a chance to actually close us out. So I'll just say again how wonderful it is to have you in this space. For those of you joining us online, it's wonderful to have you as well. Though you'll have to spiritually enjoy the punch and cookies afterwards. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much to everyone who has shared so much with us. May we honor all we've heard with all we do from here out.
I should have mentioned this earlier, but the church that I grew up in, and a lot of Lumbee people are Christians, by the way. I think that's maybe another stereotype people have. But a lot of Lumbee people are Christians, so there's a church on every block, probably 2 churches on every block back where I'm from. I grew up in a church called Church of God, which is very similar to a Pentecostal type faith, so super evangelical. I was in church Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday evening. We would have camp meetings and tent meetings and revivals, and so I was there quite a bit. And one of the things that they would do in my church, and I think they do this in other churches as well, is testifying. And so you would have people would just stand up. I think the early churches were less organized than they are now, and so sometimes they were kind of led by people just standing up and speaking. And so what we wanted to close with today is your voices. And so I want to ask you to take a moment to reflect on all that you've learned so far today. The words of Miss Ramona, of Amina, of myself, of Crystal, and of all the religious leaders here today. So I want you to take a moment to reflect. And if God places anything on your heart and you'd like to share that, I would invite you to stand up and speak to us. Any testimonies? Yes. That was beautiful. Thank you. I kind of feel like we should close on that. I don't know who could follow that up. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? All right. Well, thank you so much for having us here tonight. It's been a beautiful evening. Oh, I'm sorry. Where? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Stand up, please, though. I saw something similar last night, so that's how I know testimonies are from God. It said neutrality always supports the oppressor, and silence always supports the oppressor. And so the act of speaking out and choosing a side is something that we definitely have to do, and being in the middle is never a good place to be. It's the worst place to be, as the imam spoke earlier. So thank you so much. That was beautiful. Anybody else feel led to speak? Thank you all so much.
Halito chima chukma yakoki ishto, chatasia oklasia nitasia, sahochifo yat nita hacho alichi, sahochifo yat okla itushka anakma abanoke. So I just said, hello, I hope you all are good. Ishto is extremely grateful and in gratitude for your understanding, for your trust, for your love, for your generosity at hosting this event. I said that I come from Choctaw people, but as I was raised, triracial indigenous, I come from human being people, two-legged people, Oklasia. And then I said, just for an understanding of our culture, I come from Bear people. So we are in clanship people, and the clan of my family is Bear Clan. I said my name, my colonized name, Jason, Crazy Bear, the name that was given to me by my clan. And then I said my spiritual name, but it only is to be said in spiritual places, which this is, okay. My spiritual name is People's Warrior, or Warrior of the People, but Warrior never meant soldier in our languages. It always meant servant. So a lot of times it's misinterpreted because we think of the soldiers of our people, which didn't have to reveal themselves until they were defending their land. And the last part I said was anakma abanoke, which means with this kind of understanding and open-mindedness and open-heartedness of two-legged humans seeing each other and themselves, tomorrow we will win. And so we're going to close with an A.M.E song, which is controversial to some people, the American Indian Movement song, a social justice movement of American Indians that practice self-defense in the 60s and 70s and still do so today. But originally this was the Unity song. This was a song shared by the Cheyenne of Wyoming with the Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota, and several other tribes around there, because without them being unified, there was a thing in history that they defended themselves from that they wouldn't have been able to do alone. So the Cheyenne gifted that Unity song. Again, that Unity song was gifted in the 70s when they occupied Wounded Knee, their own burial ground, which was being turned into a tourist location. And so we're going to sing that song. And I'll just tell you something about when that song, American Indian Movement started in jail in Stillwater Prison in Minnesota. And the joke was, everybody would say, "What are you in here for?" And when they would ask the American Indian people what they were in there for, they'd say, "Be an American Indian." And it was a joke, but it was a little bit of truth, right? Making humor of truth. And so when they would sing that song, black, white, Latinx, Asian, Middle East, wherever you were from, everybody would be at peace in an incarcerated place that thrives on separation and division. So that's the song we're going to end with. We believe it's appropriate. Thank you again.